notice that it's about men and women for sure, but it's about everything else. It's about you as an individual, and I put this up every time, it's about the I in the I, you, we. Everything matters. We've got a world which is very potentially chaotic. So we use the metaphor of the lighthouse. The lighthouse is each one of you. What light do you shine on the sea of storm that is around you in the business world, in your family? And just remember that even when the storm and the sea surround the whole lighthouse, you realize the lighthouse keeper has been there all the time. It's you. Only you can make a difference in the world that we have around us. In order to create this world, we decided to come together to look at various things. The new playing field, we talk about, we want a world which has got new narratives that embrace everybody. We do look at male and female, masculine and feminine energy and archetypes. And Magical Conversations, remember those who haven't been here before, is about a space of no judgment. Can we enter every single space with no judgment? Can we find leaders who really care about human beings, the planet, as well as profit? So life at work matters. And I found this statement from Buckminster Fuller. There may be lots of them out there, but you can never change something by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's really certainly my dream, and the dream that we've had is that where we've had battles about men or women, about different diversities, about what is the main cultural business, it's no longer separate. In this pandemic, we've learned that life matters, and real synergy is a new paradigm for business and life. Now, synergy is what we're focused on because it's when we get, when two or more players interact to create a greater than the sum of the separate parts. But it's much more than that. And there was a comment last time about synthesis. Synthesis is a process of elements coming together to create another element. Synergy is always the collection of the parts, because one of the things that's very important, I believe, and I hope you do too, is that individuals, the uniqueness of individuals is key. We are all human beings and we want to honor each other, but we're also unique and beautiful individuals. I would love to have a simulated, innovative workplace, one which is always healthy, one that always embraces you as a human being and is energizing and values difference. So that's one of the main elements of understanding ourselves as archetypes. And we have 4 archetypes which we use. And I want to thank Dawn for this view of what we're doing, because there are very important aspects in business that we need to focus on, and we do focus in our research. But the archetypes help us to see these aspects differently. So we're men and women. The men are rulers or philosophers. The women are magicians or sovereigns. And we use those not to control us, but to give us a guideline and a perspective on all these aspects. And really what I want to focus on today is the culture as a corporate value. How can we put kindness into the corporate, the business view, as well as in our life? It's a very basic human condition to be kind, but kindness is more than that. I think it's also got a great value. And you've got to remember that what we're doing in bringing men and women together in our study is we're understanding that our core difference, and this is something we've discovered many, many times in all of our sessions, is that men tend to think in very much either or terms. Women think in very much and circular terms. So we need the purpose and we need the empowering. And I want you to think about how we entwine those together. What is the essence of humanity that says women can empower men and men can welcome women? Now, all of us on the line are all wise. I think we're wise because that's why we're here. But we know there's lots of situations out there where it's not easy. One of the things we've discovered is that men and women don't communicate the same, even when we have the same values. that's been a very fundamental part of our sessions. The big why may be the same. And when I say the big why, I mean our desire to make a better world. We've all got different energies of why. We've discovered that as a research team. Some of us are more focused on contributing, some are challenges, some are right ways, some are make sense. There's all sorts of different ways, but our big why is to create a better world. But the how and the what are different. Our differences add versatility, diversity, creativity, unique flavors to the mix. So that's what I want to see, is that if we take a look at who we are as archetypes, I put a couple of extra points in. So those of you who know who you are as an archetype, that's great. But those who are new today and are not sure, then let's have a very simple look at what that is. If you're male, we've got two male candidates here, ruler and philosopher. If you're female, then we have two, the magician and the sovereign. Men tend to think in a very straightforward, boxed way, either or, and that's good. And women think in very circular ways, very and. So if you have a challenge with that, that will come up in the breakout group. What I want you to think about is, how do these baseline things influence kindness? And is kindness something that we can put into the bottom line of a business, into the financial equation? So keep that thought in mind, because those with masculine energy, like myself as a woman, will end up being a magician. This is my space on the map. That's where I start from. Those who are male but have a softness to them will be the philosopher. But the end goal is to know yourself, tune into others, and create new narratives. So our conversation today is about kindness. So I want you to think about, is kindness different for different people? If kindness is a benefit in business, and we know lots of times, I think we might think that kindness is only in philanthropic senses. I would like to get it to be a mainstream value, because kindness is also goodwill. And we know that goodwill is a value in the corporate world and in our society. So if we look at these characters, and you may or may not know who you are, do they sit differently as they come into the center? I put some words around it, and I'd love you to think about that. That often the ruler may come in with the idea of tell, resolve, provide. The philosopher comes in with an energy around ask, protect, suggest. There's a slight difference between the two, but both can be wise or unwise. And in fact, this morning I was sent an article on misogyny, which is where men get stuck in a contempt for women, and maybe because of their previous experiences in life. But women can also get stuck. I see the magician as share, connect, collaborate, and our sovereign as care, console, discern. But women are a very good combination of these two. So if we put our magical conversation in the middle, as we go into some breakout groups, I'd like you to think about, how do you find your location and walk into the center? I always imagine the characters walking to the table of conversation, and as they sit down to discuss, in a space of no judgment, what kindness is, we will find some values. So just to give us an idea, I looked it up in a dictionary, as you do. Kindness is a type of behavior marked by acts of generosity, consideration, or concern for others without expecting praise or reward. Aristotle, I thought he's probably quite a wise person we could rely on. He defines it as helpfulness towards someone in need, not in return for anything, nor the advantage of the helper himself, and for that of the person helped. Now, in our society, we will tend to think of that very easily when it comes to maybe looking after the elderly or the sick or caring. But I want to put kindness into a different context. How do we make simple acts of kindness anywhere. And here, even, I love this, the picture at the bottom left, even that little touch, you know, these rather macho men making sure that they care for each other. Anybody can care. Is kindness care? Is it more than that? Is it an attitude? Is it different between men or women? So this is what I'd love us to explore, because I was thinking about, there's much unkindness in our world, which is disturbing, from misogyny, which is extremely unkind, through to sexual harassment, toxic behavior, and in our public world, you know, in terms of distraughtness, riots, things going to be very unkind. How can we actually look at kindness? So I thought in our first breakout group, and let's make it just in pairs because there's a few of us, is what would you consider as kindness from your own perspective? And to think about it in a personal sense, but also in a family sense, but also in a world sense and a business sense. And then when we come back to the second breakout, we'll look at it in the context of value on the bottom line. So let me just stop this share and see if we split into pairs. Is that okay, Angela? And we'll take, it will take 8 minutes. I really want you to bottom out what it means to yourself and to the other. Listen to each other. And do you think there's a difference from those different character point of views? And maybe in the context of kindness, unkindness. Okay? Yep. Are we all okay?
Yes.
We are ready.
Yes. Thank you.
Should we capture the question in the chat? Can someone capture the question in the chat? It will be easy for everyone once in breakout rooms.
Also, I'll write it in.
Thank you.
Oops. And those of you who know more about the archetypes when in your pairs, is to share from our own point of view what those differences might mean. So what is kindness to you from, I can't spell today, from your point of view as your archetype? And is there a, whoops. Let me see if that makes sense. What is kindness to you from your point of view? So what does it look like, sound like, feel like? And maybe contemplate unkindness as a way of understanding it. Okay?
Okay. And how much time do we have, Pauline?
Let me see, 7 minutes. Let's take 8 minutes. So we've got 4 minutes each in your pairs.
Okay.
And remember
I'll send a banner when it's time to switch.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. All right. See you soon. Pauline, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. That was fascinating. I was in a room with Val. So who would like to give some feedback on what they discovered about kindness, hopefully in life and in the boardroom?
Lisa, do you want to say?
Sure, maybe we can both share. So Dawn and I were in the same room and we had real magical conversations, real synergies, I want to say. Yeah, we were just talking about remembering who we are and our roots and being grounded. And we were just sharing stories how when we were younger, these acts of kindness that people uh, share with us, it created these ripple effects in our lives. And so that it led us to remember who we are, but also to realize that kindness doesn't have to be open. It could be a random acts of kindness, and when either you do a random act of kindness, you create this feel good feeling, but it ripples back to you. But whether, like I said, whether you do it openly or anonymously, it always comes back somehow, and the universe has a way to bring it back. But kindness is about just like children, right? Every child you look at, right? They're kind. But something happened along the way of growing up that we forget our kindness, or the people who remember, right? They continue to be kind, but the people who were affected by life, they may have gone a different path. So yeah, so Dawn and I had a great conversation. Dawn, do you want to
No, I think you said it all, really. I think there was one of the issues, certainly for me, is that words have power. So we should always be kind when we are speaking to each other, because words can actually change the directions you go in. And you can, you kindness and people being kind to you can actually create opportunities that you might not have taken. The world becomes a bigger place, and you would be able to think, yes, I'm empowered to do something different, because that person was just so kind to me. Just a silly thing was, my music teacher is always very kind to me, which means I can get up on stage in front of hundreds of people and sing. Now, had she not been kind, I would have cowered in my shell and not performed. So it's just something so simple.
Well, it is, and it increased your performance. So it's a simple thing, but it's exponential in terms of output. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's hear from some of the guys. Can we hear from who was in who were you with, Franz?
Okay. I was in the breakout with Philip, and we had a nice conversation about several things. Uh, and I was, but I didn't ask the question, unfortunately. I was intrigued by Philip's uh, way. Yes, I think I'm kind, and he gave some very good examples. And he said, but sometimes I think we may be a little bit pushy about kindness. Uh, I, then it was obviously my turn to not say why is that or that, but it was my turn to think completely different. And I basically, I felt that kindness, i that maybe we should not just focus on men and women, and not even just focus on people. I think that kindness, to really become kind, and that's also in the boardroom, I think we should recover the fact that there is so much non-human life, and that's not just plants and trees, but all the animals. And the fact the last 500 years we have completely forgotten that they matter, that we won't eat our food, bees don't fly, and we are focused on human beings as if we are the one only miracle in the world. that's so terribly unkind that um, I we will not be kind, truly kind, if we only try to sort of behave nicely as men and women. And actually, uh, I think that we should become, let the women be women and let the men, but let we all be more
Yes.
androgyne while
Well,
we are respecting the bees and the birds and the trees.
the reason, but absolutely, we would applaud that. So you were with Philip, was that right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
And
Any
unfortunately,
any comment, Philip, or anybody else?
Yeah, just to say, what I was positioning was, is there a difference in the way that men and women approach kindness, in that men will offer kindness and maybe women push kindness sometimes? So is there a distinction in the way the masculine feminine energy appears that means that's how it's perceived? It's not necessarily that because we have to remember our communication is structured around the way the person receives it, not
Yes.
necessarily the way we offer it. So I wasn't suggesting women are pushy and men are kind. What I was suggesting was, in the masculine feminine energy, is it that when men are attempting to be kind to women, they offer it because there's a tendency to be careful about what does kindness look like to a woman?
Yes.
And are women more likely to be, well, I'm going to offer you kindness because that's what I need to do, because you obviously look like you need some. So does that come across as pushy to another woman? So it was just about the how my unkindness appear. And let's hope we would say none of us would be specifically unkind, but in our attempt to be kind, maybe we could be perceived as being unkind. And unless
Yes.
you check it out, how would you know? So that's where I was going with that. We didn't
Yes.
discuss it in that depth, but that's where
Yes.
I'm positioning it, so that we look at the masculine feminine energy that's
I think you're right. And I think one of our challenges, Val and I were in the room together, we said, can we be kind to someone who's being unkind? That's our challenge point. And Krishan, you wrote, kindness is the willingness to accept each other who we are patiently, with an open mind, listening to one another's point of view, of which is different. It's also to do something nice for someone without expecting anything wrong. Absolutely true, but the words that we say are very interesting, because words like nice and the softer words may be something that feels inappropriate in the boardroom. And yet, what I want to ask us as a group, and watching the time, is how do we, and maybe we do it as a whole group here rather than a breakout, is how do we put kindness into the boardroom? And what is the benefit when we take it into a very structured environment? We glanced into that idea of kindness in the boardroom, and I think Val said that maybe sometimes people in the boardroom are too frightened to be kind.
Yeah. Yes.
What did you mean?
Well, I think sometimes I think people are being unkind because they're frightened, and it's the mask that people will, that's part of a defense mechanism, with that. And so if somebody, so for me, if somebody is being unkind, then they clearly have a pain of some description. And so me being unkind back would just, or anyone being unkind back will just magnify the pain. Whereas I think if we can just be kind to those who are unkind, and kind to ourselves in the process of doing that. So this is not about fawning or people pleasing. This is just about, I think it goes back to Krishan's point of actually understanding where somebody is at, but not taking it at face value. So if somebody says something that is unkind, is to ask ourselves, well, why are they doing it? What is there behind that?
Yes.
Look at that.
And that's really where I felt very strongly about this, thinking about it the weekend, is how can we put it to be a valuable business benefit? Because, you know, ripples of kindness, random acts of kindness are done everywhere. But we don't necessarily put them into the culture of a business as a main feature. And I wondered if it had a different persona, different resonance to saying putting love in the boardroom, which also becomes a challenge sometimes, especially if there is a very misogynist type of environment. Is kindness seen as weak and willowy and sort of wussy, in my view, but it's actually very, very strong. And we came up with this, you know, the sentiment, you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Mm.
Where does that come from?
Cruel
Cruel
people
and,
who like hurting others, getting their own way first.
yeah, because cruel and kindness doesn't feel right. And I know that probably all of us have been in situations, personal and professional and social, where somebody's been unkind and we may have smiled our way through feeling really hurt on the inside. So in terms of Franz, you put your hand up to say something.
Yes, I was thinking about what you were saying about cruel and kind. And for me, it resonates with um, when I react from my small ego, it can be cruel instead of kind. But when I try to give my best from my higher ego, my higher self, it may seem to be unkind, but it it's it cannot be cruel. It's the simple.
Okay.
It's when it's guided, then it's basically. Um, I'm sure very often I don't get what I want, but I always get what I need. Uh, if I understand that
Yes.
the service is benign, so that in that sense, then there's a difference there for me.
Yes. So
It can be
it's
both
about
cruel.
our
Yeah.
sensitivity to the. So if kindness is in the middle, if kindness is on the table of magical conversations, and all our characters we're walking into it, we might perceive kind acts differently depending on situations. And that's really the point of this, is if we looked at it from a business point of view, what is the business benefit of kindness? And I was just going to suggest
I
is
think
to,
it would mean, Pauline, that it would be a joint decision making, and everyone's feedback and point of view being taken into consideration, rather than the most influential person unilaterally making a decision.
yes, absolutely. But is there a absolutely, Krishan, and is there, if we were trying to sell this idea to the CEO, what would be the benefit in a business sense? Any thoughts?
I can jump in here a little bit. I just was thinking back to my consulting and corporate days. I think in the corporate world, competition, right, is a big thing. But competition is really not about, it's about, again, what Clarence said, is about the ego, right? How can I be better than somebody else, right? Like we're all kind of conditioned to think in the corporate world, how can I be better so that I get promoted, or how can I be better? But what if we change the thinking? Kindness about how can we work together as a team? So when the whole team gets better, we all get better, right? We all get better, we all deliver. But it is about changing the narrative, like you said, because I think also tying to what Dawn was saying about words have power. I think all these words been out there for so long, like in media, right? And how we were taught that power equals, something else than kindness. So then continue this view of competition that, you know, we all have to be competing against one another. But if we shift everyone's thinking to say, you know what, kindness does not equal to be not powerful. It's actually it's more powerful if you come from a place of your higher self, right? Rather than the ego. But it's changing the narrative again. Because I remember like when I first started in consulting, you know, like in the beginning, you know, because I was taught, right, like at home to be kind always. And then I realized, like, for instance, even like when we eat, right, together, I would always give to somebody else before me eat. But then all of a sudden I felt like, oh my gosh, when I do that at work, I think they're going to have a perception of me, right, being too nice. And being too nice means like, they think, you know, that I'm putting myself low, but really I'm just thinking everyone is family here. That's why I'm treating you like family, right? But there's that perception. But then at that time I thought, oh, I have to be like my boss, right? Because my boss would never do that. And then again, right, it changed my thinking. But now I come back to think, I think it's better when we think in this whole team mentality, because Dawn, go ahead, right? So we there's Marty. Hey, Marty. Yeah, so I think it's about changing the narrative.
Yes. So it is about, that's why I thought, is there a way, in terms of our mission here is to create a new narrative? Can we create the narrative around the aspect of kindness and make sure that it's a benefit? Because what I was thinking, and I want to put the thought out to you, and those of you who have a more corporate background can tell me, is that in a business sense, kindness is a deliverable to a customer base, isn't it? You know, we talk about goodwill, the goodwill of a company, the energy of a company that's known for its kindness in society. Is that also inside the boardroom in terms of behavior? Can we see it as part of the narrative that kindness actually is a value that all the characters on our gender map can deal with in different ways? But there is a plus point that it could be on the balance sheet. It could be a win for the CEO who's not sure about this whole new narrative and how to engage men and women together.
I think if you have this conversation, right, it's like, again, right, what we do, a lot of words, getting to the root cause, the roots of it. If you bring this same conversation we're having now to the boardroom, starting at the seniors, like the leadership level, right? So then if they remember who they are, right? Maybe then it starts with everybody, and the ripple goes throughout the organization. Because if the leaders do not remember who they are and realizing that kindness, you know, it's actually who we are to begin with, right? But then and have that trickle to everybody.
Absolutely. And what Philip writes in the chat here, it is the internal customer is just as valuable as the external customer. Kindness can sit readily in the middle. That if we're kind within a company, and I've been really looking at this, the viewpoint of, you know, regenerative leadership, and really looking at the companies that on a people, planet, and profit, and hopefully in that order, that kindness then actually is not just a philanthropic output of the company externally. It has to start inside. It has to be, so maybe when somebody is being, in my view, unkind because of the characters around the map, I have the ability in that culture to say, I think we should be a bit more kind here, or that kindness is a conversational topic within the boardroom as to what it means in action when people are blunt, maybe, or we're feeling upset and we don't feel that we're heard. And we've had that come up many times in our meetings, that when we've divided the group between men and women, women will often say, I feel unheard, I feel patronized, I feel ridiculed. That's not from every single man, but it's a sentiment that comes out from many female-only groups. And it was just that interesting that somebody sent me that article about misogyny this morning. And there's nobody here who fits that, but there are many people out there where we know there is still sexism and there is toxic behavior and there is not good things happening. So my view was, how do we, say, promote the idea as part of our narrative, our real synergy narrative, that kindness is a value to you as a human being, to the business, and to the loyal customer base that you're creating out there in a world which is changing enormously.
And I think if we, going back to our conversation, Pauline, so if we talk about the opposite of kindness being unkindness or being cruel, right? So cruel being at the farther end of the spectrum. If we went into any human being and said, I'm just going to be really cruel to you, will you perform better that way? Do we really believe that actually doing that? And so I think, Tammy, it's where you've talked about, you know, laughing about things. We maybe need to just sit down for, you know, creating a new narrative and just almost like laugh at the foolishness of even thinking that that would be a way forward. I'll just beat you up first and then. But I think another really important thing is the first person we've got to be kind to is ourselves. And actually, we're probably crueler to ourselves than to anybody else.
I think that's true. We need to be kind to ourselves. And that's where it comes right full circle to honoring who we are. When, you know, we use the archetypes to help us understand that. So Philip said the trouble is that people are cruel and people do perform. Fear is a great destroyer. Well, that, I think that is true. There are companies where they lead by fear, and
I think
cruel.
the problem with that is that and people lead by fear because they're in fear. And yeah, I absolutely agree, Philip. There are plenty of companies that operate like that. However, right, only because they believe it works. And it is actually about sort of saying, and because the problem with it is once you've embarked upon a culture like that, in the first instance, if you take fear away. So if I look, when I used to deliver management programs, if my fear was that all my delegates will walk out, right, I could easily walk into a room with a gun and say, I'll shoot anyone who walks out this door and doesn't do what I tell them. The minute I let my guard down, right, so they'll all do it, no question of it. The minute I let my guard down, someone will take that gun off me and probably shoot me. And this is an extreme example for that. At which point I will then say, well, you see, I was right, you know, that what I actually needed was another person with a gun to back me up. So actually, when it's actually working beneath that and sort of actually going to where the root of that fear is in the first place. And so, yes, it looks like it works, but that's because we don't have a comparison. And I think that's part of where we're moving to next. You know, it's a bit like, why do we have war? Because we believe it works, right? We believe these things work. And that actually is the issue. And so it's getting to the heart of why we think that and providing the evidence that actually that's not the case.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're all about here, is making sure that we reinforce the message that all these things matter, but also teaching each other and others that because of the natural position that people come from, the different places on the map, that sometimes when we are, any of those characters are feeling tense and under pressure from another situation, they may walk into a situation and be in a slightly bad mood or something where they take it out on somebody else, and that is not right. So we have to always take responsibility to be kind. But my vision is that we can create a model where, and I think that's what's coming now, is that the leaders who want to surpass the traditional model and have something different they are the ones who will listen to the new narrative. But we have to practice it in our own lives to ripple out the energy from each of us as we go out representing the real synergy. So I'm aware we've come to a full hour. We don't want
Pauline,
to.
that reminds me of the famous quote by Gandhi: "Be the change you want to see in the world."
Yes, absolutely, and that is a
And
position.
little by little, the ripple effect will get better or improve.
Yes. So if each of us, and we would certainly, with what we're doing with this research and with Corporate Art International, make sure that this language of kindness is one that's paramount, that people actually understand what it means. Any thoughts, Angela? Have you got any thoughts on what we've been saying?
I'm enlightened by this conversation. It's just, we need more people to have this kind of conversations. I agree with all that is said and put in the chat.
Yes.
And for me, someone said it earlier on in the chat, the value cycle, that's precisely, you know, that kind of framework in my mind. It always starts with you and then bridges to the people around me, creating that relationship so that we can create a system that really is a representation of the values that we're trying to live in. Yeah. That will be my chime in, and it's behind you.
Yeah,
Pauline.
I always have it here. One of the things I was just, and Caroline had to go, but the value cycle is your own value cycle. So it's an interesting example where somebody may be being in a mood, they're behaving badly, whatever it is, for whatever reason, we can still maintain our own value cycle because they're vibrating at a different level. And it's something I've used personally with clients where they say, but this other person, they're doing this, and it's, you know, and I say, yeah, but that's their value cycle. Your value cycle is vibrating for you, even though you may be surrounded by others who are not vibrating like that and are unkind in your view. You can still hold a nature of kindness inside that value cycle. And what happens when you vibrate consistently at that expansion level, that other person won't find any ground to get hold of you with their cruelty. They're in default. They will eventually pick up your resonance or not. So they may just go. But that I see is a way of taking this aspect of our narrative into the boardroom and being able to deal with the different characters when they say, yes, but I do it this way. Yes, but, okay. But kindness is a value to business in terms of, in a practical level, it could be goodwill. And we know that companies actually put a fiscal value on goodwill, don't they? So that if we can sell the proposition, and I mean that in a general sense, that is our goal. So for Corporate Art International, our goal is to work with those CEOs, and this is what I wanted to share with you, is that we want to work with those CEOs who are willing to be outside of the traditional business model that was, and to see that they may not have experienced it yet, but these kind of things will make a difference, not just to their people and the planet, but their profit line as well. And I like the idea of laughing more in the boardroom. Yes, definitely. I was just reading this. It is about energy. It's about vibration. It's about resonance. And Lisa said that let's shine the light on the darkness, and dancing. Yeah, and Tammy, yeah, we're dancing, definitely. And I think actually, well, yeah, but we can dance with our words. So for instance, if any of us were in a situation where people turned on us and said, oh, don't be ridiculous. What do you mean kindness? You know, we're here for business. Go, yeah, well, there's a value to it. So instead of taking umbrage, we actually go into the value that it gives. I always think this idea of paying forward is what companies can do when they have kindness. they're paying forward, and it will pay them back in the end. There's definitely evidence to that effect. So I really felt strongly about this. Fran said here, let it come from the heart instead of the head. Definitely, definitely. So are there any other, we got some good comments coming in here. Life of Brian, have any of you watched, have you seen Life of Brian? Yes, oh good. If you haven't seen Life of Brian, go and look it up. It's a very funny film. So are there any other comments? We'll check it out. If you've not seen it, Lisa, you must see it. Are there any other comments? We decided that we don't need to go the full hour and a half, that our goal was to not keep you all too long. If there are any other comments,
I
then
agree
please.
with you, Pauline, where you said that in the corporate sense of a companies, the term I think that applies is goodwill, and that it will reflect on their bottom line eventually, may not show straight away. I was actually also thinking of that, but you said it, so I concur with that.
Thank you. Well, I think that just to put into context what we feel, and I say we in the sense of my wonderful colleagues here and anybody who wants to work with us to change the world, is that I'm very clear that there are mindsets out there who want to change but may not know how to change. And they may be male CEOs, they may be female CEOs, they may be all male teams, they may be, we don't know, but there is a mood of change, and that's something that we seek to find those companies, and then to make sure that their kindness, their ability to love and serve becomes a message to the rest of the world. So in terms of the lighthouse that we each are, those companies become a lighthouse to shine a light saying, actually, this works. And at the end of the day, we actually make a lot of money by being kind, being careful, being philanthropic, yes, but also being careful about the planet and not having too much waste. And I see this as a ripple into our society, where take it down to a very simple level, that people won't litter the streets because they're kind to the planet. I don't understand anybody who leaves litter on the street. I was brought up that you should always pick litter up and put it in a bin. But we know that there is chaos on the streets, certainly in America, and I'm sure in Great Britain and Malaysia, that, you know, we're under tension, we're under pressure from a world in chaos and crisis. So we've got to think expansion, that this new narrative is about expansion, about kindness, about love, but it's also, it's full of common sense as well. And it regards people as valuable humans, valuable assets, if you like. I would like to dream of a way that you actually see on the bottom line, on the profit and loss, you see kindness, and you see love, and you see things like, you know, intuition, the value of intuition to business, the value of emotional integrity to business, as well as all the other things. So that's the vision that we have. And I want to thank you all for being here this morning and to joining in. It's been nice actually having a very nice intimate group. And we are at a point where when we meet as our research group, I keep on saying this, but I'm going to publish the research. I'm feeling I've got it coming together now, and I put kindness into there as well. So are there any other comments?
One last thing, Pauline, I was just thinking, yes, because you're talking about the environment and companies being kind to the environment and all that, I was thinking that, you know, rather than companies being seen as this anonymous bad guy, they could be more human, you know, they could be
yes,
engaging with people on a more compassionate level. So for me, kindness and compassionate are very closely
yes,
tied in.
definitely. And I appreciate that point of view. I say one of the reasons I focused on kindness was we see a lot about, random acts of kindness. Have you ever been at the supermarket and had your bill paid for by somebody in front of you? Those kind of things happen where people do things for other people without knowing what the consequences are, but the consequences will be good. If we can endeavor to create that understanding out there, we cease to be greedy or manipulative. And I think, having read this article this morning about misogyny, which I'm going to post up on LinkedIn, what's interesting is that many times people may be in fear of not knowing what to do to make life different when they don't actually want to be where they are. And that's my theory, and that's for men and women alike, is to help people come out of the shadow of fear, whether that's anger or it's sadness or whatever the fear is, and to enable them to be in the light of love. And kindness is a conduit to that. That's what came to me this weekend. So I appreciate having the opportunity to share that with you all.
Really love this conversation. Thank you, Dr. Pauline, for
Yeah,
bringing
thank
it
you.
together.
Thank you, Pauline. It's a very timely conversation, especially in the tumultuous 1 year plus that all of us are grappling with and trying to do the best we can to adapt to make sense of it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you, Krishan, because I know that life is pretty tough in KL at the moment and lockdown is very severe. So
yes.